Brogy and Dorry, the dual captains of the giant pirates and warriors of Elbath that spent 100 years battling with each other, every day over a disagreement that neither could remember. Their battle was one of warriors whose pride dictated unrelenting conviction. The pride of these men, their greatest held value, was battle, and it even was a virtue as strong as faith, as it is the god of Elbath that gives favor unto victory. The conviction of these two men is beyond description. For one to have such a deeply held value that they would battle over it with someone that they view as an equal for 100 years is astounding, especially as they both risked their lives in the process. Yet, such a larger-than-life, enormous sense of pride is beyond what most can conceive of today. So it begs the question of where does it come from? And is it truly supernatural? Firstly, it is important to review the inspiration for the giants to begin with, within the One Piece lore. The giants of Elbath are inspired from Vikings and Norse mythology. The Norse pantheon of heroes, giants, and gods were beings of immense power and pride. They valued battle and dying the hero's death above all things, as the preeminent heavenly realm belonged to those who perished in battle, heroes and gods alike. It is no wonder this mindset is so prominent in the giants of One Piece, as their pride and belief systems seem to be a nearly one-to-one adaptation of values held around the Scandinavian mythos. But how does this connect to the common man? Certainly this lore had an influence on Scandinavian culture, as the hero has been an idealized persona for eons, it seems. The reality is, we don't have strong examples in our modern world of this paradigm. The sacrifice conviction it would take to put your entire world aside for 100 years to battle over something you believe in, to be without your home and your people while you battle for something you believe in for decades at a time. We don't have a modern equivalent. Who today can say that they push themselves to their physical limit while doing this, while getting very little deep or consistent sleep? Sure, there are some in the world who sacrifice a lot. They do very great things for short periods of time, like going to war and returning home. This type of sacrifice is brutal and even devastating for some. It is surely to be honored, but most who enlist do so with calculated action. Some avoid direct conflict. Some serve knowing that they have a home and someone to go home to. And others, a family who will follow them from country to country, from base to base. Tough, but certainly not living on an island for 100 years. Hundreds of miles away from your homeland. Alone. Some take jobs that require them to be away from their families for a year or months at a time, for some period. Truly tough, but usually these people are exchanging time spent at home for large sums of money that would be life-changing for most. It isn't quite abandoning your entire way of life or quality of life for your belief. Some have pride that involves making themselves the best in a particular field or getting the most physically fit. Yet for those who seek the attention of other men or women by becoming the biggest or strongest, or those who seek accolades and honors through their work, cannot truly match the pure esteem that is required to fight your toughest battle and opponent in isolation and away from the eyes of others. Now, it isn't to diminish the work of others that I make this comparison, but rather to give light to the precedent that Brogy and Dorry set in their 100-year battle. It is perhaps true, like with many powerful characters like Goku or Tanjiro, who dedicate themselves to training in battle. One can derive inspiration from these two heroes of legend, but I think it's also important to paint a picture of the level of deep personal belief one has to possess in order to accomplish what they did. They battled without family or friends. They battled with little rest. They battled through seasons. They battled without home or hearth. They battled without awards or accolades, and they battled with someone they loved and respected. It isn't for the faint of heart to battle for such a long time without any amenities or comforts, choosing not to go home in the process, and especially with someone you care about, your partner, your best friend. This is why even among giants, Brogy and Dorry are so incredible. However, I don't believe that the soul of a fighter, of a champion, doesn't exist in the world at all. Perhaps the soul of a champion is in all of us, but still is a muscle that you must work and grow. I can see the sparks of it in someone who conquers great tasks, like climbing the highest mountain or discovering a land that cannot be accessed with technology, or in those that push their bodies to the very brink of exhaustion. However, I think what sets these men apart, what sets this battle apart, is the fact that it was based in love. Love for the self and love for your opponent. The love for self is a kind that stands firm on the business of your virtues and beliefs, for someone who is ready to defend them even in an indefinite manner. And love for your opponent is knowing that your opponent is worthy and valuable. This is why Brogy and Dorry took breaks in their battle and only wanted to see each other at their best. If one of them devalued the other or saw the other as a threat, like you would an enemy, they would have simply fought until the other was incapacitated or unto death. But they didn't. They wanted the other to survive. When I see Brogy and Dorry battle, it reminds me of my childhood best friend. We used to play together a lot, but we always wanted to be better than the other. We'd fight over who played the main hero or who ran the fastest. We'd fight over who won the most rounds of Soul Calibur. He never let me win, and I never allowed him to either. We were just happy meeting on that field of battle whenever we could. I can only remember this dynamic one other time growing up. It was quite similar with a friend that I had in elementary school. When we met, one of the things that we found out that we had in common was our grades. So we'd battle over who got the most A's. It really didn't matter who won. We did it for the love of it. And that was true of my best friend as well. It was love, the love that I had for my best friend, and wanting to match him that made me strive for more. Both of these friends made me better at those times. And conversely, when I lost those friends, when they moved and we no longer saw each other, I suffered for it. I became less competitive and my grades may have fallen. And yes, this was also when I was a child. Yet I give these two examples because my elementary friend who fought with me over A's was a girl. And I think it's important to uncouple this type of battle from masculinity, as women also have this same desire in them. And moreover, because the very mythology upon which Elbaf giants are based has spaces of honor and power assigned to women in the Valhalla realm. Women of battle and heroism, and more specifically, the Valkyries. But also because this dynamic is harder to find in adulthood. Adults tend not to spend their time perfecting themselves, let alone in competition with another person. As I got older, I still had a desire to make more of myself, to understand myself and the world better. But I found that most people, the older they get, want people around them who reflect their own standing in the world. And they don't want people around who desire to expose their weaknesses or challenge how they think of themselves, which is the very essence of battle. So over the years, when I found someone who I admired, who I wanted to make me better, they would possibly see our differences as reasons not to interact with me, only to look down on me or treat me with kid gloves and never give me a challenge. So one of us would turn away and I would have to surpass them on my own. So when I look at Brogy and Dorry, I can see that this battle and their relationship is very great and precious. To be willing to put a fire to yourself for no other purpose than your own values, for a contest with no external rewards, is a great feat. To fight against a loved one Brogy cried greatly over when he thought Dorry had succumbed to his injuries. and to find someone who can be your equal to try to get you to reach greater heights is extraordinary. By their looks alone, Brogy and Dorry are an odd couple even among giants, so I imagine there was a time when they weren't so equal in strength, and just like best friends do, would fight each other to increase their own power. To have this battle for a century, with no clear end, is the ultimate measure of endurance and will. This is what the Brogy-Dorry battle was truly about, and why the will and conviction required for it is a thing of legend.
It's safe to say that we're both starting to get homesick here. Dorry. That's why I intend to win this duel of ours. I'm going to beat you and go home to Elbath. Got that, Brogy?